Good afternoon, everyone. We are ready to start. So, as is our practice, we'll start by standing for a moment of silence, and then we'll follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get into it. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then if we could have roll call, please.
Brad Hint.
Here.
Ken Snyder.
Here.
Keith Hamill.
Here.
Chantal Ostra.
Here.
Tom Eggers.
Here.
Next item is the approval of the agenda. I'll take a motion for that.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Hamill.
Aye.
Ostra.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
All right. Moving on into the public forum session of our meeting. Is there anyone here that would like to address the council at this time? Any written comments?
None.
Okay. Let's move on then into item 4, review of the mayor and the council goals. That's under the first tab in your binders, if you're doing the binder. Any comments you want to make on that, Sam? It's just a review of what we went through a couple of weeks ago and just kind of sets the tone for some of the stuff we'll be discussing today in the budget. So any comments or questions on that right now from the council? All right, then the moment we've all been waiting for. Scott Stevenson's with us this afternoon. Going to discuss bond capacity.
Well, prepare to be disappointed. Good to see you all again, though. Just up here during budget season, it's kind of made a tradition up here for the last several years to give you a quick update on where you're at from a bonding capacity standpoint, and usually think it's a good idea to kind of get refreshed on that when you're working on your budget. Part of your budgetary process probably includes some capital improvement planning, and it's nice to know what you've got for
2 days at hard.
you guys really were excited to see me. I tell you, I get intro music, the whole bit. Anyway, I think Sam had included in your agenda a copy of your updated debt capacity sheet, which I tend to update on an annual basis. It incorporates updated valuation information when it becomes available from O'Brien and Sioux counties, and it kind of works from left to right, updating your actual valuation, which predicates what the city's statutory debt capacity is, which is 5% of your actual valuation. As you can see here for the current fiscal year and the forward-looking fiscal year, which you're budgeting for, the city's total debt capacity now for a second year will exceed $25 million. And adjacent to that, to the right, you can see the outstanding bond issues that the city has from years past. You'll note the 2017 BGO issue is now going to be callable as of June 1 of this year. So to the extent you've got excess cash that you need to apply somewhere, maybe out of TIF or otherwise, you've got the ability to either refinance that, pay it off early, whatever the case may be. That issue was primarily for wastewater treatment plant improvements, but it was the component that's financed under GO debt was done originally under the TIF law, so you can use TIF dollars for that should you choose to do so. Moving forward then, just last year, the Western Avenue project is also included here, and you can see that brings kind of total debt against debt limit as of June 30th of 2025, about $11.5 million, leaving just shy of $14 million in available legal debt capacity, which is under 45%. If you'll recall from years past, the city, generally speaking, kind of maybe views 75% of total debt capacity as maybe a little bit of a internally managed threshold that you'd maybe prefer to not exceed, although it's happened in the past and can happen certainly given larger capital improvement needs if they were to come along. But right now you're in a very comfortable position, I think, is the real main takeaway from this, is that at 45% of your debt capacity, even with taking on $3.7 million for Western Avenue last year, still in a pretty good position relative to existing debt profile. Less good news is interest rates haven't been great for a couple years now. Really hasn't been much relief on that front. You know, we see headline news of the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates, but all that really does is lower extreme short-term borrowing costs. So when they say they're lowering interest rates, that's overnight borrowing rates for banks. Overnight borrowing rates are different than 10 and 20-year bond issues, as you can imagine, which is more customary what the city's borrowing looks like. It's not really for operating purposes. It's for capital purposes over a longer period of time. Those rates have not really come down yet anyway. We'll see what happens. You know, we've got a new administration and maybe things will change going forward. Who knows? But for the time being, rates have remained elevated in 23 and 24, and for the early part of 25 anyway, that's been a consistent theme.
Yes. So Scott, thanks for coming up today. So a couple of questions. So we haven't done a revenue note, I don't think, since 2017 or 2018. But one of the things that Todd and I and you have been talking about, and we might have the cash to do it out of the sewer fund, and it might not be necessary to do a revenue note, but we've been talking about potentially a $700,000 to $800,000 revenue note for the North Fifth lift station improvements. So, two questions relating to that. Number one is, for a TIF revenue note, is that typically, I didn't mean to say TIF, for a revenue note, would that be about the same interest rate as what you'd get with a TIF general obligation note? And the second part of that question would be is, would this be backed by general obligation for a better rate, or would it just be revenue? You want to speak to
Sure.
that?
Good questions. So a sewer revenue note typically would have a slightly higher interest rate, but it's not dramatic anymore. I think 20 years ago there was a wider spread because there was perceived to be less security interest, but over time investors have gotten more comfortable with, you know, enterprise utility revenue notes, and so we don't really see a massive difference. You know, we're talking 10 to 20 basis points, so 0.1 or 0.2% difference in interest rate for revenue notes versus GO. You can issue pure sewer revenue bonds, and so that's kind of when I'm talking about a difference in interest rate, that's what I'm talking about, is a sewer revenue note or bond relative to a GO note or bond. You can back a sewer revenue bond with the city's GO, then it counts against the city's debt capacity, and you will enjoy a little bit lower borrowing cost. It's also a little bit simpler to do, so from a staff and administrative standpoint, there's a lower cost associated with it. So there is some cost efficiency to doing it as a GO if you have available debt capacity to allocate towards it. If you don't, you want to keep it on a standalone revenue note basis. It doesn't count against the city's debt capacity, but again, it comes with slightly higher interest rate. You typically have to fund a reserve fund, and again, it's just a little bit more time consuming to put together from an administrative standpoint, but there's no real you should or shouldn't do it this way. It more is dependent upon what the facts and circumstances are for the city at the time.
Okay, and then that leads to my last question on this is, can you remind us what is fallen off? You talked about what is callable, but there's some things that have fallen off or are falling off. You want to talk about those? Good
question. So the 2017, in earlier 2017, we refinanced a 2011 note, and that debt will come, its last payment will come due June 1 of this year. So that's a significant payment, around $300,000, that will end as of the end of the fiscal year that we're in right now. So when you're forward looking into your budget for FY26, that payment level will no longer exist on a go-forward basis. As well as if you look at sometime this year, I'm not exactly sure what the pay dates are for that emergency vehicle loan you have with the bank, but that will pay off in the fiscal year that's forthcoming as well. I think you have a partial payment due in FY 2026, but it's not even a full payment. So you do have some debt rolling off that will provide some debt service requirement relief in the upcoming budget year and going forward.
What interest rate was that debt that's rolling off?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I don't think it was terribly high. the first 2017 issue was probably 2.5%, something like that is what I'm guessing in my head. Now the 2017 B issue, which was financed over a 20-year time horizon, had a little bit higher rate, so that ranges from 3 to 4% in terms of the outstanding principal on it. Unfortunately, rates really aren't enough lower now where there's any economic benefit to refinance that. Not at the current time anyway. That could change.
So how big was that debt originally?
The one that's
What was
being
that?
paid off, or the other one, the
The one that
17B for the,
that we're satisfying in June?
it's about 2.3 or 2.5 million, somewhere in there.
Okay. And what was our payment, annual?
300,000.
How much?
300,000.
A year?
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you bet.
All right, any other questions for Steve? You have more to, or Scott, I mean,
Stevenson.
Mr. Stevenson?
Close enough.
Do you have more to present?
No, just here to answer questions. I mean, again, happy to discuss anything you guys might have on your agenda as far as capital improvement needs and how that fits into your overall bonding capacity picture, but we're probably a little bit early on to have any other specific questions on that front, but if not, that was all I had.
Just kind of out of curiosity, do you have any clients you serve that run at zero debt capacity? And they pay as they go?
Well, they're not really clients in that case. I mean, I'm in the business of loaning money, so.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, it happens. It's rare, though. It's very rare. It's very uncommon. I mean, you know, some of the most wealthy communities in Iowa, whether it's West Des Moines or Polk County or Des Moines or whatever, like, they all run significant amount of borrowing cost. I mean, if you just think about the way the tax or the Iowa code is structured to accommodate paying for capital improvements, there's not a lot of room to just build up a lot of reserves to pay for ongoing infrastructure needs without borrowing.
So, okay.
And furthermore, frankly, your borrowing cost is subsidized by the ability to borrow on a tax-exempt basis. Your borrowing cost a lot of times is lower than what you're receiving in terms of investment income. It doesn't even make financial sense to avoid borrowing. Not to, you know, obviously, it's a little bit self-fulfilling here on my behalf, I'll admit, but the facts are, it's just, there's no real economic advantage to avoid borrowing in today's climate.
All right. Anyone else?
I have one more question. Our percentage of our debt levy, that 45% that's going to be, where does that fit in with the other communities you deal with? Is it low, high, medium?
Probably on the lower end of the range for communities that would call peers of Sheldon. You know, there are certainly some that are lower that are real valuation-rich communities. You know, you get around the lake, for example, where they have incredible valuation relative on a per capita basis. They have less debt relative to their valuation. But, you know, you get down around the metro even, and it's not uncommon for that to be 60-70%. But for communities your size, I'd say that 60 to 80% range is pretty common. It oscillates some as, you know, you have financing needs come and go, and maybe you don't borrow every single year, but I would say you're mid or lower end of the range for your peer group.
Thank you.
You bet.
Scott, what are the vote thresholds these days for a public vote? And
Yeah, they just
for-
changed that
for
with
like a new
HS
building or
72.
a new, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for general corporate purpose stuff, you're at, I think it's around 900,000 for a community with a population over 5,000, which would be what Sheldon is. It's still not real high, and you can't build a lot of building with 900 grand anymore, but that's kind of what you're stuck with for new building construction. Now you can do reconstruction, remodeling. If you're not changing the footprint, there's a lot you can do, but for new construction purposes for city buildings, you're in that $950,000 range, somewhere in there.
All right, unless somebody else has a question yet, we'll say thank you. And appreciate you coming down,
No problem.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
and we'll move on. All right. All right, then we move on to item 6, city manager.
Yeah, that's you. Thank you, Mayor. So I linked a 3-page memo today. Not sure if you've had a chance to take a look at that or not. I'm just going to hit a few of the highlights, and then we'll move into Angie's section, and if we need to, we can circle back and talk about mine. So just a couple of things. Feeling pretty good overall about where we're sitting. Levy is projected to stay about in the range that it's at now. TIF release growth and increased overall valuation are factors in our growth. There's also limitations now in state code. Planning on 10% increases in workers' comp and health and liability. Our liability insurance costs are very high, much higher than they have been in the past. So we can talk about that when we get to that. We do not have any new employees in the budget. Pavilion is requesting one, so that's something that we can discuss when we get to that, but it's been our practice with a new employee to have that off to the side during a budget discussion and then add that in if that's something that we would like to do. And then we just had the update on borrowing. We are going to be losing the backfill dollars completely. If you look at page 3 in my memo, in 2029, it's going to go from about 17,000 to 0. Several years ago, it was at 135, so it gives you an idea of the loss that we are absorbing. We are blessed by having the interest income that we have coming in, but we do not want to get exuberant about spending all of our cash, because the cash is generating more cash through interest. So if you, kind of like running a foundation and spending down your principal, you end up in a situation where you don't have enough to work with. So it's something that we either have to be cognizant of that or look for additional funding sources. So those are my comments for now. We can circle back later.
Any questions for Sam at this point? All right, then we will circle back later to that. Next up is Angie. Anything you'd like to share?
Just a couple things that I'll hit on. We are being forced to upgrade our computer software, so in the budget currently we have that split, a third general, a third water, a third sewer. I projected high for a price to the tune of $150,000 total. We'll continue to look at other softwares. Sam, Todd, and I met this morning about the projected general fund balance, and what you have in front of you has a third of Todd's wage coming from general, and we had budgeted the police wages with the department that we had 2 weeks ago. So in an effort to kind of lower that, we've moved Todd's third to a split 50-50 of water sewer. And then we lowered the police wages because the 2 officers that Eric just hired will be paid considerably less than the officer that just left and the other one that I had budgeted to be hired. We also, when we get to loss, would like you to consider paying for $75,000 of the library's property tax, which actually comes from the general fund, from loss, as well as the museum's full $12,600 that comes from the general property tax. And we are also hoping that the loss can fund the EMA's $34,000 truck outfitting. They are going to be getting a truck from the police department, and they need to outfit that. And it's probably going to be less than that, but that's what we were hoping we could do. And we'll touch more on that when we get to loss too.
Any questions for Ange?
I have one. Refresh my memory, I know I asked this a number of years ago. So in the general fund, when the department end of the year, don't spend all their money, what happens to that money? Where does that go?
Stays in the general fund.
Stays in the general fund, and it gets accounted for?
It's just that we just have a larger cash balance than was anticipated.
So then we have a bigger balance to begin with at the beginning of this, so
Correct.
this year, we could have more money.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Are we projecting that scenario?
I don't think there's really ever a time that every department in the general fund spends 100% of all of their budgeted funds, so it typically happens. I mean, one example is our police department. We've been without an officer for how long, so we're not paying that in wages, but those wages are all budgeted. So that will end up not being expended, so that cash will just stay in the general fund. And then we end up have a bigger beginning balance in the next fiscal year. Something else I should mention, last year we moved the ambulance out of the general fund to their own funds so that we could see if they would be sustainable on their own. And in the next fiscal year, we're doing the same thing with the pavilion, to see if they can cash flow on their own too. That's it for me, really.
Okay. Any other questions for Ange? All right.
I know.
All right, then let's move into our department presentations. First up is ambulance. Kristen, it can be you, yes.
We'll keep it short, sweet, and to
See
the
you,
point, so
Scott.
Trish has more time. I'm just kidding. Kristen Hahn, Ambulance Director, and Jared Johnson, Assistant Director. Just a couple things before I go through the budget. We did do our year-end report. I'll give that to Sam for him to link to a future meeting for you guys to see. One thing to note, SCAT did, again, end with a record-breaking year. That's not a positive sometimes when you look at it, but we ended with 853 calls last year, which is well above 767 the previous year. So that'll be linked in a council meeting to come, going over the budget. The operation budget, I'm not going to read my whole memo, but the operation budget pretty well is going to stay the same. There's only a few increases, which would be each service level gets an extra $1 an hour on call when they're on a call pay, increasing our students from $10 a call to $12 a call, and then increasing officer pay by 6%. This does not include the officer that is currently an employee, but it would in the future present that way if she were to separate from that job. Capital improvement, this is no different than what it's been for the last 15 years that I've presented it to you guys. This year's a rotation, our 9-year rotation for a new ambulance. So every 3 years we get a new ambulance. Our 2016 is going to be a trade-in. We'll continue to work with Aero. They've done well for us for the last many, many years that we've been working with them. So we'll continue to work with them to get a new ambulance. Various equipment is in there for $30,000. This is to replace equipment and update the equipment that needs to be updated throughout the year. Pagers, obviously that's a necessity for us to respond. Electronics, which would include some of our computers. Our paid staff kind of have to share some of their computers and their laptops, so get a couple more of those. And then every year we do put in their building maintenance if there's anything that comes up for the ambulance garage or the ambulance garage doors or whatever it may be. Then I will leave it to questions for you guys. Not Jared, no, just kidding.
The increase that you talked about, is that because of the bigger area you're serving?
Increase of what?
Of calls, the record breaking in terms of calls?
Is it no, we've been serving that area for the last couple of years. I think our call volume is just going to increase because of our population, of what we've responded to. I mean, you can't always pinpoint what the reason for an increase is. We just, per page we go, so.
Anyone else?
Well,
All right, that was easy.
Yes, it was.
Again,
Thank you.
thanks to both of you and the rest of the team as well for running the team as you do. It's a valuable service, and we do appreciate it.
Thank you very
And
much.
thanks for being here today.
Yes, of course,
All
thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Our city attorney is not with us. His letter is in the binder or on the digital version.
What is the reference to 7C? I mean, I'm looking in expenses, where am I supposed to look at expenses?
That was the last, I'm sorry, I might.
Yes.
That was the last agreement, was in 2022, it was for 3 years.
Okay.
But if you scroll down below, you'll see his request.
What is his request?
His request is $255 per hour.
And what is it now?
Let me pull it up. One second.
Just pay the bill.
I checked checks.
210. Is it 210?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, for 20. What's that, 220? 220 for 22, 23, yeah.
Thank you.
And then you probably saw that, but he has a statement to ensure consistency between all our Iowa municipal clients. He's proposing the rate of $255, so I think that's across the board.
Okay.
Is how I interpret that. Any questions on Micah's proposal? Woods Fuller's proposal?
That equals 16%. So, just if anybody's interested.
How many?
16%.
Okay.
There wasn't supposed to be any raise at all in it. With the contract, it was set for a period of time.
We're at the end of the 3 years.
Right. So it should have stayed the same for 3 years, is what I'm trying to say, Tom. Okay. That's what the contract was for.
Okay, ready to move on? Crossroads, Tricia.
Hello.
And Brooke.
And I brought Brooke with me because sometimes she thinks for me and it's very helpful, so thank you, Brooke. I didn't bring her with me, she just showed up.
We gotta keep
Kidding.
an eye on you.
So, thank you for the opportunity. I hope you have read the memo. Kristen just told me it was long, but that's only because we included our year-end report, which I gave to you in December. Some key points on the memo is that our fiscal year budget that we are proposing is very similar to last year, and that is due to the fact that we're pretty much at the plateau of events that we can navigate and manage. Our revenue does show will be up a little bit, but that doesn't include hotel motel tax because Ange does her calculations later, but that is looking to be pretty good after coming off the marketing meeting. So, focus. And our expenses are about the same. So, all in all, the proposed budget before you just shows that we're about the same as last year. And then with that, we have the 2 full-time and 22 regular part-time with some seasonal staff. Some of our seasonal staff is like college kids that come back and work when they're out of school. Our staff is phenomenal. They go above and beyond for all of our events, the once-in-a-lifetime to the usual corporate meeting. We continue to offer the exceptional experience, and our calendar is reflective of that because of how full we are. As of today, we have 103 events already booked for this year, with 56 of those being wedding-related. We thought January, February was going to be mellow, and guess what? That proved to be wrong. So anyway, with that, the biggest thing on our budget memo is a request for a 3rd full-time person. The year-end report gave you statistics. I'm here to answer questions that you may have. One thing to point out is that, when we first came up with this idea of having a event center and the investment that we made as the council back then and your mayor back then, we had hoped it to be successful, and it is. It's exceeding what we had thought it to be, especially when we look at the numbers of what they had projected that could be. And thankfully, they were wrong of what our could-be numbers were. So with wanting a third full-time position, do you have questions that we can answer for you?
So in the report you gave a few weeks back,
Mm-hmm.
Tom,
didn't
step
ask you
closer
the
to the
question.
mic.
I didn't, sorry.
It's okay, Tom.
Anyway, the question I didn't ask you at that time was capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I talked to you later on about what would be, the minimum resource needed to be added to increase capacity as far as numbers of events, and you said human resource. So with this proposal, how much more capacity, how many more events can we add to the calendar?
I couldn't give you a number for sure. I can say that 175 between the two full-time that we have is expending, it's taking its toll on not only the staff, but our goods.
Right.
We are continually turning down events right now, just these past 3 weeks of being open, since Christmas. Some of it is because dates are booked, others are because we're not open on Mondays, and there are many times where I give in, and we'll open on a Monday, and then shoot myself in the foot, because it is nice to have that. Monday is our Saturday, that time of rest. So I can't tell you how many more numbers, other than what we would do is be open on Mondays and have a rotation that if you were off this Saturday, then we're open on Monday. So we could take events on Mondays. It would help in being a little more efficient and running the business of who oversees what. So the number, the capacity, I don't know, Tom. I don't know what that number would be, but I do know Mondays would be open. And we'd have a third person to help navigate the implementation and execution of those events too.
So the obvious reason for the question is how much additional revenue can we generate?
Right, and that's a good question. I would like to say that the revenue we do generate covers our operating expenses quite well.
With the addition of this
I haven't
request?
seen the numbers with what I've talked to Ange of if we were to have this third person, and you have those numbers on the side, Ange? I have them too, maybe? I have to think about where they're at. Like, I don't know what all the package would be when it comes to full-time and benefits. But our goal is, when we propose our budget, is that our revenues do not exceed our expenses. And though the full-time salaries and benefits are not included in our budget, correct me if I'm wrong, Ange, right?
Correct.
They do show in our, right, with our monthly board financial reports that we get, it does show in there our salaries and our employee expenses, such as FICA, workman's comp, group insurance, IPERS, etc. So that does show in there, and we are not a profit-making business, but we do well with the events that we have and the services we provide, that revenue that comes in has been able to cover what we have, and maybe then some. We'll have a better idea of our accounting when we switch in the new fiscal year, similar to the ambulance, to give her a better idea. Will it cover it 100%? I don't know, and I can't guarantee that. But I do know it will allow us to be better at our business, because right now it's catch-up. It's catch-up, and it's catch-up. And I'm not talking mustard and condiments. We are constantly trying to just maintain and keep up with where we're at with business. So I can't tell you how much revenue, but I can tell you being open on Mondays would be enticing to some that need the Monday events. I can tell you that the business would be run better than where we're at now.
Okay, thank you.
So this third person, in terms of, is it a specific skill set you're looking at, or is it just another clone of the two of you, or, I mean, is it an entry-level position? What kind of?
Definitely not a clone. I'm just kidding. Brooke would be great to clone. So what we're looking at is something maybe a little more entry level. Someone that we're looking for an event coordinator, so not necessarily a manager, but somebody that can help coordinate our corporate and social events. Brooke's main focus is weddings, and with 50 to 60 weddings a year, it's a lot of detail that goes into that. So the third person would be more along the lines of maybe fresh out of college with a little bit of college experience as they were interning or doing that on the side.
Okay.
It may be a little more entry level based on, I was guesstimating around 18 an hour, so around 37,000 I think that came out to a year. And they would help with, I don't want to say grooming because that just sounds wrong nowadays, but molding them into what we need them to be. So starting them with corporate social. There's needs, but it's not as detailed as a wedding would come in. Unless that's their forte, we can begin to mold them into that. But ordering the supplies, overseeing details with our setups, rotating in the management of our events, whether it's weekdays, weekends, nights, etc. And then taking on additional tasks and answering the phone and replying to emails. And then some. But sometimes we have a checklist of things we'd like to get done today and the phone didn't stop or the emails didn't stop with requests. So
More of an administrative assistant than an administrator?
yes, it'd be more along the lines. It would not be management or administrator. It'd be more, I just called it event coordinator, but it would just be more along those lines of an assistant, but then also in the rotation of managing events.
Which would still fall under that event coordinator position. They are familiar then with the event details,
Sure.
just like our part-time event manager.
Okay.
In other words, you'd have about $80,000
About,
by the time you
Salary
benefits,
plus benefits.
all the benefits, salary,
Correct.
everything. You're gonna have a minimum of 80, I bet.
But would that alleviate
What's that?
some of
76.
Brooke's overtime
76?
then?
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, then yes, and then Brooke is currently on overtime, and as I think I put that in my year-end report. April through November this past year was an average of 50 to 53 hours a week for Brooke and 50 to 55 for myself, and that's just April through November. And I'm not saying that December through March were down. That's just seemed to be the busier time last year. So it will alleviate some of the overtime.
So how much of the overtime would we eliminate? Or
Well,
how
we-
much overtime do they pay in a year?
Currently, we just switched it. So this past year, I would say it was around 3,700 to 4,000 in the 6 months. And then ideally, it would be go back to salary and not
36,
overtime.
4,000 to 80,000?
Mhm.
A lot of difference.
I see where you're coming from. hmm
It needs to be full-time, if you consider,
So in the
or is
past,
that
we...
impossible to get that position as
Yep.
part-time?
So we had a regular part-time person that left us in November of '23 to move and get remarried. We tried to refill that position, and we had some candidates that were worthy of coming in, and we would have loved to hire, but they wanted full-time, and then they went elsewhere. The ones that were willing to work part-time didn't quite fit the mold and the needs that we require. We've thought about part-timers, maybe getting two, but our business is different. We're not Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We are Tuesday through Saturday, sometimes Sundays. So wanting to get someone that can work part-time with some of the wonky hours we have is difficult because of the events that we run. So I don't No, right now we have a girl that's helping out, filling in. She was a banquet staff, which means helps with the events, dishes, bussing tables, etc. She's been helping out 1 day a week with inventory and overseeing the setup so that staff, part-time staff can go do their thing and we can keep working on our job. But it's not something she's interested in. She just wants to do this on the side as we need it because she has another full-time job. So I would like to say in this industry, you know, in the event hospitality type industry, the good candidates are looking for full-time with benefits.
Full-time, 40 hours a week, or sometimes some figure 32 full-time.
It would at least be 40, that's what the city's based on. Mhm. So even though right now we have an overtime line item in our budget, Burke, I am salary, Burke used to be salary. What it's coming down to is burnout, and the burnout is real, and we need to improve the way we do business and not play catch-up all the time. Is it going to cost the city a little bit? Yep. Will we be able to generate some revenue to cover some of that? Yep. But more importantly, we'll be able to effectively and efficiently run the business rather than just going in and quick do what you got to do and maybe I can go home and have a life. Now, we took this job knowing that hours are weird, demands are different from each event, even though you can have 60 weddings, no two are the same. We know there's going to be wonkiness in the hours and the needs. But at the same time, I have to wonder, where do we stop taking events so we can have sanity and have time to be more efficient running our business? Sanity is more important. And in this business, they're lifetime events, so it's not like something we can just let a part-timer take over that. Maybe these are important events that we work with. So summer planning of summer vacations doesn't always get to happen just because, and we knew this coming in, but just because if anything comes up, it falls on us. We're the only 2 full-time people. So there's many times we might have staff gone on camping trips, mission trips, vacations in the summer, and we have a wedding of 300 people with a gold package that would usually staff 7 to 8 people, and it might just be 3 of us, Brooke and I, and maybe 1 other part-timer. I think, Sam, you've seen me in the kitchen doing dishes many times because we're short-staffed on part-time. And I don't mind doing that, but I might, it's going to help alleviate some of the stresses that come with the job. So is it 80,000 that you're looking at in debt? Possibly, but remember 7, 8 years ago, they were predicting us to be $100,000 in debt, and we've yet to lose. We're not gaining in profit, and we're not that way, but our revenue covers our expenses, including our salaries and the majority of our benefits, and we still have a little bit left.
Yes.
You and I had spoken, Tricia, about the idea of contracting out certain parts of, setup and tear down. And that was a good conversation that we had.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. So some of the questions, Sam, that you had posed to me was subcontracting out maybe our setups and tear downs. And right now our part-time staff does that. So it would eliminate them. But anyway, we'd have to have other people come in, so there's really no difference. In talking with the other event centers in this area, and we meet quarterly, so it's Sioux Center, Orange City, Rock Valley, Crossroads, and Emmitsburg, and sometimes Lamar's. The subcontracting that some of the other event centers do is their cleaning service. They'll use Service Master, Service Pro. We have a great cleaning crew, and if they retire in the next 2 to 7 years, we have plans already in place for some of our staff that might move into that because they fill that need when those 2 go on vacation. So the subcontracting, if we did cleaning, would cost more than what we pay now. So all of our jobs, all of our needs are completed by our part-time staff, and then Brooke and I, the 2 full-time. Is that where you wanted to go with that? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Just my last comment is I wanted to say that Teresa in Lakeview really appreciates
Oh, yeah.
help. She's mentioned to me, you know, they
Mhm.
built an event center there, and the information that you provided and the mentoring that you provided her has
Sure.
helped them a lot, so thank you.
And that's where the pavilion, you know, when we came and opened up, we got help from Terrace View, Prairie Winds, Rock Valley opens, they come to all of us. We all work together on all that. So, and it's great that we meet quarterly to go over, are we on the same page with how we handle stuff, and what means one thing here, what does it mean there? It's just, it's good business, and then we do get to vent a little bit, but all of that is kind of like Las Vegas. What happens there stays there, so. But,
Can I say one more thing?
mhm.
I'd like to say one more thing, is that I'm really surprised and pleased that you're doing as well financially out there as you are, because that wasn't.
It wasn't the plan.
It wasn't anticipated,
Mm-mm.
but it also isn't sustainable.
Correct.
And I think it's important to recognize that every event center needs to be invested in by the community in order to survive, and I'm not really sure that the goal is to run it in the black, because it is, after all, a community center at some level as well. So I think it's good to
Right, and that's why
it's good to keep the costs down.
Correct.
But we want to be careful not to promise that we're going to run it in the
Exactly, and
black.
that's why it's hard, you know, people say, are you generating revenue? Well, yeah, money comes in, but we're not generating a profit. The money that comes in, we try not to exceed those expenses.
When you say it's not sustainable, what do you mean by that?
You have
That
to.
it's
You
money
have
it's
to.
been running and maintaining, and it's not sustainable. Why not?
It's not sustainable in the black. We should not anticipate it being, especially when you have 2 full-time employees working the number of hours that they are,
Mhm.
and you have to add more people. We shouldn't anticipate this being a profit center.
Mhm.
It's happened to really help out with cash flow, and it's going really well.
Right.
But the benefits are levied. So, I mean,
They are, but Ange,
They're in the
correct me if I'm
levy.
wrong, they still show in our financial reports.
They
And
do
I'm
show
not
on your
saying,
financial
yeah.
reports, yeah.
right.
So I'm not saying that the city is responsible for our salary and our benefits. So if anything happened and we, oh my gosh, it's COVID and boom, we're down, you know, we made changes when that happened. But yet, in the end, it is this, we are city employees and it falls under the city's budget expenses, general fund of our salary and those benefits that come with it.
So with that being said, I just want to reiterate that the questions I were asking were more forward-thinking
Right.
than trying to be accountable. So we have a resource that is more than desirable for many events, and that I'm gathering that from you saying you have to push people away because we don't have
Correct. We turn
don't have
people away now.
opportunities to
Yep.
take care of their needs.
That's correct.
So forward-thinking, do we want to take more opportunity to service some of those people, or are we gonna, have we reached our limit with the building for the size it is and for the, you know, the events that we can handle in 365 days?
Mhm.
Or is there room to do that? And if there is, what do we need to do to be forward-thinking about this? So instead of maybe asking for 1 full-time person, and you need 2 full-time people in order to reach that new capacity level,
Sure. Mhm.
why aren't we talking about that?
Right. And so, correct.
And I'm not looking for an answer today.
No, but I do have a
want to put
response.
it out there because
I do want to elaborate.
Because I
Mhm.
do think that that's something that we have a great resource that not only that benefits beyond just having the event there, it benefits our community.
Right.
It tells people a story about Sheldon that we want to be told.
Mhm.
So why not look further ahead
And
and
that's-
see what is possible
And that's
and what's
if,
required?
if we were to gain a third person, I just feel like we are going to be able to better our business, like we are going to be able to focus and dream and actually execute. There's many times we dream, we're going to do a Valentine's Day event. Well, it's January 21st, and guess what? We never had the chance to sit down and plan and do. Just because it's the constant requests of reservations. And then we do turn away events, and people understand that. But it's going to come to the point where, do we put a limit on it? I mean, we try to keep 2 Fridays a month for sanity, and that doesn't always get to happen. But we don't want to be known as the event center that has turned people away because we don't have enough to keep it going. Right now, we're wonderful. It's a great business. It's a great Sheldon asset. I don't want the impact to, like, if this is our plateau, what is the plateau and where do we stop? I'm at 103 events right now. When do I stop?
Right.
It's January 21st.
Right.
And then, so we don't want to have a negative impact. If anything, we want to be able to take the time to better plan, foresee what the future, predict it,
Right.
whether it's building capacity, staffing capacity, product, whichever. Right now, we are not efficient and we are not effective. We're flying by the seat of our pants, and it looks good. So imagine if we're not flying by the seat of our pants, how much better it could be. Maybe there's not 5 workman's comp claims in 5.5 years. That would be me.
Right.
Sorry. But maybe it gives us a chance to promote and market our business and actually just go in and check off the list of things you want to do today that you didn't get to do last week because, yeah.
Yeah,
So we're not
I would just
crying.
say that visioning is important for the council.
It is.
It's important for the city, and it's important for you. So I would stress that you take that back to your board and see once what that might look like.
I think our board would be
5
on
years.
favor of that. Our board, one thing that the visioning is meeting with Tim. When the city was doing their thing, he met with us directors and gave us a challenge to come up with 12 things for your business on effective ways of improvement. I'm really saddened that we didn't get to really hone in and capitalize on that because just a little bit of a conversation we had was, sounds like you need a Crossroads 2.0 because we're not planning ahead. And that's nobody's fault. We built an event center not realizing how fast it's going to catch up, and we're still playing catch up, which is great, but wouldn't it be nice to plan for the future and be a little bit better at maintenance, scheduling maintenance, and stuff like that? So there's that opportunity for that, and I believe if my 2 councilmen that are here would agree that there is a vision, but can we actually sit down and put together a vision and then not just have it on paper, but put action to it? So we're good. We want to remain good. We want to give each person that walks in that exceptional experience. But I'm telling you, we are at a plateau, or we're going to have to do less if we want to keep sanity of our jobs. And if not, like I was just about to say, we're not crying and boo-hooing that poor us, we work a lot of hours. We love our job. We love working these events. But guess what, city? It's a successful place out there, and we could use one more person to make it even more efficient. Thank you for your time.
So I do have one question.
Mhm.
You talk about the income that it generates, that it's covering expenses. Is there any money that is set aside for capital improvement?
Yes.
For expansion, other than the levy?
Right. So we had our civic tax levy for a while, which is no more.
But other than that, is there anything out of your revenue
That will cover-
cover
No.
capital improvement?
Nope,
For
there's nothing.
expansions down the road?
Correct, that is
So-
correct. The only thing we have is the percentage we get from the hotel motel tax. That's it.
So then your operations expense doesn't plan for the future either?
Exactly. Mhm.
So, other than the,
Right, so like the storage building that we want, and we could really use, but we'll see.
storage everybody can use?
Exactly, right? And we knew that from day one, that they told us, you're going to need more storage. Well, we all knew we had to trim back to make it doable. But no, so we do not have, other than what you see, and right now,
And that's only 19,000 projected.
54,000 is what we have now.
Yeah.
But we will probably expense that with our storage building when that comes too. But no, Brad, so not even that. All we have is the civic tax is gone, so now it's just the hotel motel tax and the way that's divided up. Some goes to our general, and the rest goes into our capital improvement type fund.
So we don't have a plan when the air conditioning goes out? Need new tables, new chairs?
Right. We do with tables and chairs. We have that, well, yeah. little by little.
gonna be spent.
Not a huge one, right,
Okay.
right. But yeah, that's,
I
if
think-
something major happened with the HVAC, nope.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment. You had mentioned the administrative part of like looking for someone who can handle the administrative part. And I feel like these two are handling so much administrative work that they're not able to focus so much on their management part. And so
Thank you.
that's just
That's, you're correct.
one
Mhm.
comment I just wanted
Right.
to make. So.
Yeah.
Not that we're above not answering the phone, because we're not. We'll do
Right.
everything. We'll clean the bathroom, whatever we have to do, but it would be nice to, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I look at what you're doing, and if there's a job to be done, I see that you are picking it up. You're doing it as much as possible.
right.
We have a wonderful facility out there, and I think you make a good case for our consideration of another employee. If we want to keep it going, I think we need to seriously think about this. But the fact that it is as successful as it is now, in this short of a time, in less than a decade, is a testament to both of you as well as the rest of the staff.
Mhm.
It is a desirable facility. People loved going there. Every time I'm in there, I just am amazed at how
Thank you.
nice it is and how well-run it is. And so thank you for that effort.
Thank you. And I thank the city. I'm so glad we went through and did it, and now it's, woo.
The other thing I'd like to throw in is that I took a few minutes to walk around and look at things, and they've done a great job of making sure the building stays in good shape and clean, and it's served us very well, somewhat due to using quality materials and somewhat also the people being
Thanks,
conscious
Pete.
of what things should look like and how to get them taken care of, so
Mhm.
kudos to them.
Thank you. If ever you're in the neighborhood, don't just go around the roundabout, just come on in if you have questions, or stop in, chat with us. Because, you know, I have a lot more notes that I could share, but I think it wouldn't be fair to the other departments not to take up more time, and thank
All
you,
right.
ambulance, for giving me some of your time. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
EMA.
Wayne called me and he had to leave town to go for a super high-tech thing. He just he asked me to say that their budget is pretty much the same. The only thing that they are asking for is the $34,000 for a vehicle/outfitting. I think he wasn't completely clear that the police department was willing to give them a vehicle, or if he needed to give some money to the police department for that vehicle, but that is really the only additional thing that he's got in his budget.
Okay. Any comments about EMA and their,
He states in his report that, he says we have 34,000 allotted from last year. So did we have 34,000 in the budget last year for?
I believe we did, but to Brad's question earlier, it just leaves the general fund starting balance at a higher level.
Okay. So we have to re-allot it this, okay.
Yeah.
I guess the other question I have are on the sirens. Has there been a lot of advances in siren technology lately?
Yeah, those sirens were installed in 2001, so the ones we'll put in now will, are updated. The coverage is about the same, but the technology inside the box, the brain box, is much smarter. And we put in AC/DC sirens now. So we used to be battery operated only with tender chargers. Now we put in sirens that run on 110 or 220 power, but then have backup batteries in the case the power is out for a storm. So we replaced 2 sirens last year. This would be 2 more sirens, and that would get the 4 originals replaced.
Okay, then I noticed one place where they were talking about using a taller pole to accommodate a repeater. Is that something that's going to solve some of our problems?
That was done last fiscal year already. That's already done.
Okay.
Yeah. We would look at, of the 2 that we'd replace this year, we do plan to relocate one though. It's located on private property. We want to get it moved to city property. Just
Is
a
that
better.
the cemetery one?
No.
No, different one. Okay.
Yeah.
And 4 are adequate for the,
No.
way you worded it, it
No,
sounded
we
like-
have 6. We have 6, and the college has 1. So there's seven sirens total within the city. The original 4 were built in 2001. Since then, we added one out by the pavilion, actually, and then we added one in Brad's backyard almost. Down in the Thorman Park area.
Hollower.
Yeah.
You'll hear it.
And that was based off a coverage map we have of the whole community. Yeah.
Okay.
Ready to move on? All right, fire. Is that gonna be you, Brad?
Yep, looked over our budget the last several years. We changed some items around, less than 1% increase. Capital improvement items follow our 5-year capital improvement plan, follows the 20-year capital improvement plan. They've been laid out several times. We're kicking the pickup out of there because we don't have room for a sport vehicle. So that's kicking down the road to a couple budget years if we get room to store it. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. And that comes from the officers of the department, so it's not just the chief doing the budget, it's the whole officers.
Any questions for fire?
I think I had asked before, Brad, but you guys have a spot for the new tanker?
We will put it in, out at the training facility
Okay,
for the time being. It's not the perfect location, but it will work.
okay.
So, just somebody has to go, and nights, weekends, go get it there. During the day, we have, city employees there close by if they're in that area, so.
Something I noticed, just anecdotal, is we came by the fire on Highway 75 this past weekend. I don't know if you were aware of it or not, but over by Zomer's on,
Hall there, yep, I heard about it,
yeah,
don't know much about it.
and there was tankers flying all over the place.
Rural, you have to haul water from the closest
Hauling
town.
water. I mean, both
Yep.
directions, going towards Hull and going towards Rock Rapids, so.
Yep. Yep, a rural area,
There was a lot of apparatus at that fire,
So-
there really was, so.
when a truck's capable of pumping 1,500 gallons a minute plus, and your tanker's 2,000 gallons to 5,000, depends on what departments have, you use a lot of water. Big fire, big water.
All right. Can we move on? Library, Nicole, you're up. I have you listed after fire. I did?
Well, this one list has got EMA fire.
The printed ones are different than the online ones.
Yeah, I think my
That's fine, I
attachment's out
just
of
wanted to
order.
make sure we're all going in the right
I'm old like you. I'm old.
Anyway, I'll be short. We had, I threw in my annual report that I shared with you earlier. I added a few graphics so you could see our percentages of increase. So just a little reminder about that. But, we tried to keep our budget pretty tight this year with just asking with increases of where we needed them. Repair and maintenance, one of the things that we like to do is get our carpets cleaned. With the renovation, we had new carpeting put in, so we want to make sure that we keep on schedule with that and keep that up. Otherwise, if you get dirty carpet, it gets worn and torn a lot easier. Supplies, building and grounds, we realized we underestimated the amount of money that we'd need for supplies. We only had $700 this year, so we're asking to double that. Office equipment, instead of buying a computer, we're asking for an iPad to replace that for our card catalog system. And then the only other place that we're looking to increase is in wages. So you can see that's just a very short wish list that we have this year. And then we are asking for a 1.43% increase in general property taxes. What questions do you guys have for me? You can see, looking through the budget, we did try to take some other line items and make them lower as well.
Just a comment that you're showing nice increases in programs and things, so
Thank you.
great.
Yeah, the library is a hub of activity in this community with all the events that you've got going on, and that's a tribute to you and your board as well, and your staff, so keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So what would be the, you have wages just blank, did you pencil anything in?
I know we usually figure wages separately, so I just penciled in about 4%, but that would be negotiable, deciding, depending upon what the city decides.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. By the list I'm working off of, police is up next.
You're on here, Tom.
Then airport, then Tanya. Hi, Eric.
Hi. A lot of our budget things that we changed were, like, for instance, fuel is going up, so yeah, we're a little bit behind on fuel for the last few years. For vehicles, I'm looking to hopefully not trade in a vehicle for 1 year, for next year, to add another patrol vehicle to our fleet. And then we talked about the part-time wages we're looking at adding. I had a certified officer from a different agency ask about possibly working part-time. He currently works as a conservation officer, so during the winter especially, his hours are cut back. So we're looking at trying to supplement some full-time officers with part-time officer for now, hopefully to help push off needing another officer a little further. But that would be to help with, we have a lot of single officer coverage right now, and that's scary. So trying to help fix that a little bit.
I can relate to that. On a call about a month ago.
Yeah.
I was glad when the O'Brien County deputy showed up.
Yep. And
So-
and the county is a great asset for us. They're
you
really
can't-
good
you
about
can't
coming and
rely on
helping,
them.
but they're often single officer coverage too, but that's not very many cops in the county when you got someone that's being uncooperative. So
Yeah. I have one question. You just said you want to add another vehicle.
yes.
You want to skip a year and add another vehicle. Why get rid of one? Why get rid of one? When you want to keep another one down the road?
That's what, so this year, we'd already said we were gonna give this truck to EMA, so I didn't wanna tell EMA I changed my mind and not give them this vehicle. Also, one of my problems right now that we have is, we have almost every single vehicle is a different vehicle from our
Different
fleet.
make,
Our
model.
fleet is a mismatched conglomeration right now. So when I have mismatched vehicles, when I replace a vehicle, I can't outfit it with the equipment that we already have.
Sure. Yep.
That's still not always a guarantee because model years change and things like that. But I'd like to try to I'd like to skip trading in a vehicle next year so we can add one more vehicle. And my goal is we have it in the budget about every year to purchase a vehicle. And I'm hoping to start getting back on track of buying the same vehicle multiple years in a row. That way when it comes time to trade them in, hopefully we can continue to use the cage and the lights for at least two rotations of that vehicle.
Sure.
Instead of having to buy new cages and lights every time.
So what style of vehicle would you settle on?
And I would let the guys have some say in this, but in my experience, I've preferred small SUVs like Ford Explorers and Dodge Durangos. So I'd probably have to meet with like Jim Corver and make sure whatever we try to pick, they're going to continue to make for at least 5-6 years in a row.
Sure.
But that's been, I've worked with most of the different patrol vehicles now, and that's been my preference so far. They get better gas mileage and they're more handy in the, not that we're urban, but in town turning around vehicles and parking vehicles. Like I run that Tahoe right now, which is a fantastic vehicle, but it's significantly bigger than what I've had in the past.
Okay, thank you.
the school resource officer position, is that being filled now that Officer Crawley is leaving? Somebody else going to take that on?
Yep, I'm going to put out a letter of interest, or ask for letters of interest, in the next week or so for who would like to be the new school resource officer for us.
And that's for how many hours a week is that supposed to be?
We're contracted with the school for 10 hours a week.
Okay.
So likely, at least this quarter, we probably won't be billing the school for that, because I don't think that we'll have the resources available to give them the full 10 hours a week.
Mhm.
But that's something that we're moving. I need to send an officer to Dare School and school resource officer school for that.
Okay.
Do you think 10 hours is enough?
In the schools?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, it would be ideal to have a full-time school resource officer. If the school doesn't want to pay full-time for that, though, I also don't fiscally want. For our police department, I have better uses of a police officer than assigning them to the school for the additional 30 hours a week. I'd rather have them on patrol.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
You made it through your first budget presentation,
There you
Eric.
go.
You did
Thanks, Eric.
Keep up the good work. Airport, you're up next.
Pretty much standard as the last few years. This year, we're going to be doing, I've seen, we have we have to do for the federal government, we're required to do a master plan update, as you can see on that. It's in the upper 150,000, 95% of that's covered by the federal government through AIP funding. And so, the city only has about $7,400 of that, and Beck Engineering's working with the FAA on doing that. There was a couple requests in our memo, and you've seen that too, and these are capital improvements. So really the biggest outlaying request that we had was replacing a pull-behind mower that's on that we use to mow all the grass out there. I think it's a 15-foot mower. One we had was used. It's probably 20, 25 years old, should be replaced. And the other one is a riding mower, which we've had for probably a good 10, 15 years, and it's a Kubota. Of course, those are almost as expensive as a pull-behind mower for the tractor, which is crazy. So those are the two largest outlying requests that we have. The rest of it's pretty much standard budget. We do have some fencing in there for security fencing, and the state funds about 85% of that if they grant that money, so the city has a 15% match. So other than that, the rest of the requests are pretty standard. Our budget's about the same. We've increased a few items. I didn't have it in front of me. I know Josh had it, so I didn't know if he was going to be here or not. So, but majority of the increases are just the rising cost of fuel and utilities and things like that. So other than that, really no big requests that I'm aware of. So, anybody have any questions?
Anyone? Questions for?
I don't think so.
Okay,
All right.
that was easy. Thank you.
Thanks, Lyle.
All right, Tanya. We're ready for you.
Good afternoon, City Council. So I just want to start off by saying how important the partnership between SCDCA and the City of Sheldon is for our community's growth. Just to quickly recap the two requests that we have in the memo. So we have in there a 4% increase on the contribution that you do annually to the SCDC, and that's just for operational and covering some of those costs. That's for a total of $135,200 for the coming fiscal year. So that's that 4% increase from the $130,000 last year. The other request that we have in there stays the same, $20,000 for the storefront program. The reason that stayed the same this year is between the interim and I myself taking over activity kind of in the middle of the year, we didn't get a full grasp of what that would really look like. So we want to take a full year and really determine what that program looks like before requesting an increase. So just a possibility that that may come in the future, but for this year, just the $20,000 again. Any questions?
If I might.
Yep.
So I see some of you looking for the SCDC memo. It's not printed, and it is in the agenda, but I linked it today or yesterday, and I didn't properly order the links. So under item 8, if you look under attachments, it is between EMA and fire. EMA and fire on the web version of the agenda.
And if you get a chance to look at it, if you have not, it is pretty straightforward, but those are the two requests that we have on there.
So you're all looking, is there any questions for Tanya? No? We too value the partnership that we have together, and we want to keep that as strong as we can over the next coming years. So, thank you.
Thank you.
If I might, one
Yeah.
more thing.
Yep.
I just wanted, and you can go ahead and sit down, but one of the things I wanted to mention, Tanya, is how much we appreciate your help. You come over to the police department and translate over there. You come over at least several times a week and help us in the city office. So, thank you for what you do.
Yep. All right, then let's move on to the Public Works, Cemetery, all the other. Are they going to, oh, Todd, you're going to take care of it? Very good.
I told Eric I wouldn't be here more than 3 minutes, so we're gonna have to move. Yeah, I lose.
Ready to start the stopwatch.
Yeah. Cemetery, not a lot different as far as the dollars spent. The one thing you will notice is this fiscal year, or starting actually this spring, is the first year that we intend on utilizing contract labor to mow the cemetery. We've been under contract for the trimming, and then you'll recall then the cemetery sexton will, duties will change. They'll still do openings and closings, but then they'll spend some time, much more time working in the parks along with the cemetery. So the improvements that are proposed are mainly out of urban renewal funds. Questions on cemetery?
In the report under the department memos, it said something about 10,000 for stone repairs from TIF, and I can't find where here it is. In the capital improvement plan, it's listed as 5,000.
Yep, during a recent cemetery board meeting, that was a good catch, Mayor. During a recent cemetery board meeting, they asked for an increase in stone repairs. So then the memo was switched to reflect the
So the memo is,
change.
the ask is for 10,000.
I believe it's in the TIF budget as 10, yes.
Roughly how much work, how many stones could that fix, roughly?
I think we've been spending between $750 to $1,000 a stone. So that's between, so typically the ones we've been doing are ones that they're falling over and we're afraid they're a danger. So you gotta remove the stone completely, you gotta tear out and then set a new base, and then you gotta have them come in and set a new stone. So it really depends on the size. Rick has been working actually with Glenn Gedkin and Dave Vanderbrock on that. And they go around and they pick the ones that they feel like are the most dangerous, and they try to knock off 4 or 5 a year with the 5,000. So hopefully we can up that a little bit. And it's stones that are, you know, there's not a family around anymore that you can say, hey, go fix your stone.
Sure. I've had a few people ask over the course of the year about repairs of stones, so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You bet.
So Todd, do we ask families that are still represented in the area to fix stones?
If it was something that we felt like we could find somebody, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's their stone, right? But if there's nobody to find,
Right.
it becomes a liability or a concern for us.
Ready to move on? Go ahead.
Parks, we'd like some urban renewal funds there to do some road improvements. And then I guess the other thing that I would mention is Based off the strategic planning session, we did include a few dollars in the urban renewal budget to potentially work with a consultant to start evaluating the parks. What exactly that looks like, I can't tell you. What the cost exactly is going to be, you guys will see it later. But we felt like, based on your goal setting, that that's something that we needed to look at, and where our assumption is that it should be a set of eyes other than just ours. So, yeah, that's all I have. I already covered the fact the cemetery section will be in the parks a fair amount as a shared position now.
What's the 1% transfer of hot? What's hot?
Hotel motel tax.
I wondered that, but I thought that's not HMT, it's HOT. Is that, anyway,
That's what Angie tells me.
okay,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
What was the answer to it?
Well, hot, is it supposed to be HMT or is hot hotel motel taxes? That's
Hot is hotel
that's it.
motel tax.
There we go. All right.
I'll type it out next time.
I'm just learning the lingo. All right.
So, Todd, are we done with trees and parks now? Tree removal?
We have removed the majority of the trees in the parks. I think there is one tree in City Park right-of-way that we recently added to be removed in a later round.
The reason I ask is if you're going to do an assessment, I'm sure the fallout from the tree removal will be part of that assessment as well, possibly.
Sure, yeah. Certainly can be.
Huh?
Certainly can be, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go on.
Rec and pool. So Trevor gave his report a while back, so I don't need to cover that, but they had another solid year. Those guys continue to do a great job. We are going to sandblast and repaint the interior of the pool this spring. We're asking for some urban renewal funds to replace the kids' water slide in the southeast corner of the pool. It's a structure that's just failing. It seems like to me it shouldn't be that old, but it's been sitting in that corner since 2008, and it's just lived its useful life. And believe it or not,
Stands about yay high?
yep, and believe it or not, a new one of those is around 40 grand.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the Park and Rec Board looked through lots of brochures and websites, and that is a very average run-of-the-mill. That's not even a high-end fancy structure.
Okay.
One of the reasons for the selection of the structure that cost that, though, well, middle of the road structure, but it also fits on the pad that we have, right? So we don't have to knock out concrete and redo concrete work in the pool. We can just set it on the existing structure and anchor it down and go again. Or so they tell us.
So Todd, in the past, you've talked about the pad in previous budgets. This budget doesn't appear at all.
No, the Park and Rec Board talked at length about projects and the splash pad had some momentum. It lost some momentum. They didn't feel, well, I kind of told them that it wasn't looking like if there was going to be funding for it in this upcoming fiscal year. They wanted to make sure that we got the existing pool rehabilitated. So they haven't forgotten about the splash pad. They just didn't ask for it in this particular year. So don't think that the discussion is gone. It's just not an ask for this fiscal year. Yeah.
What's the reason for the question?
Yeah. Well, and it was it was discussed, or it was an option in strategic planning, and I don't believe it got any traction. Am I wrong there? I'm right there, ain't I? Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Okay. Stormwater. So this is a, quote, new department, so to speak. It's something that we as staff have been talking to you guys about over the last couple of budget cycles, and to be honest, it's time to start a stormwater fee. There's never a good time to start another fee, I understand that, but the time is now. We have been paying for basically all of our stormwater improvements out of road use tax funds. And then we've been paying to fix roads out of other funds, and it's just not sustainable in the long run. So you don't have to decide the fee structure today or during this budget session, but you do have to decide, or I would hope you would decide, whether or not you'll support a fee of some sorts. What I have in the memo is a $2 fee which is a flat fee per household water meter, and that would generate around $45,000 a year. That would cover the basic general maintenance that we do in a year's time. It would not cover any large projects. Example, in this upcoming fiscal year, we have proposed over $800,000 of stormwater improvement projects. A $2 fee obviously isn't going to help us with that, but it will start to cover some of the catch basin improvements, pipe replacements in the center of town that need to be done on a yearly basis. So I guess I'll stand for questions there. We're essentially asking you to start another utility.
Does that fall under the authority of streets or water and sewer? Or
Currently, stormwater projects get handled between myself and the street superintendent. Our street superintendent is the one that helps line up when we need a ditch cleaned out, or our street guys will do some of the catch basin work and repairs on their own. Sometimes we subcontract it, just depends upon how much time we have and how complicated the project may be. But the work don't think of it as new work. This work is already happening. We just we just have to have another revenue source to help pay for it. RUT is designed to pay for roads, not drainage. And so to cover, we've spent over $300,000 in the last 4 years of RUT funds to do stormwater work. And that's fine, other than we're not fixing roads with RUT work then, and there's plenty of road work that still needs to be done. And there's plenty of stormwater work that needs to be done, well over the $40-some thousand a year of maintenance that we're talking about. You know, the last number of years, we haven't fixed a single road with road use tax money. So.
But do you generate enough road use tax
We
to fix a road without bonding or using TIF?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. No, we only generate a little over $700,000 a year.
Yeah.
770, Ange? 750, 770, something like that. And yeah, that's a sizable amount of money, but that doesn't go very far.
Yeah, 774.
Yeah. Because road use tax pays for more than just fixing roads, right?
So why limit it to $2 if that doesn't do it?
So that's a bargaining, that's a Greg, we need you to do something. So there hasn't, if there's support for something higher, we can draft an ordinance of so. So I'm starting to gather some ordinances from some other areas that have stormwater fees already in place. I'll give you an example. Sibley has a $5 flat fee. City of Sioux Center has a $2 residential fee, and then they have 3 different levels of commercial fee based on impervious area. Sam and I have talked about that makes some sense. We understand why they do that, but you also don't want to make the formula so complicated that you can't figure out what you're supposed to be billing somebody. A lot of that work on the front side would be just figuring out what's right for every place. The idea behind that is a place with a huge parking lot and a lot of square footage of roof line produces a lot more storm water than a single family home. So I think they have a $4 small commercial fee, and then like a $7 medium commercial fee, and then a $10 or $12 large commercial fee. City of Hall currently doesn't have a stormwater ordinance, but their council is in the process of considering one. Their city administrator sent me their draft. They are also looking at a flat fee with small, medium, and large commercial. So The $2 at least got us some maintenance funds. That's why I started there. If there's support for something greater than that, or you believe there's support for something greater than that, we can bring something greater than back in an ordinance form closer to the 1st of July. It's needed.
It's work that's got to be done.
Mhm.
I mean, we've been robbing from Peter to pay Paul for how many years now? And we're gonna implement a fee, but if it's $2, it doesn't make sense to me to just say $2, but that doesn't really cover anything beyond our normal maintenance. But we've got more we can spend. I think we need to at least consider something larger. That's my own opinion.
If that's the consensus of the council, we can bring something back that looks like more, obviously at a later date.
Sounds like we should at least look at it.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what the commercial breakdowns would look like.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, you said the small, medium, large. Was that commercial property only? Yeah. Like what that would look like.
Yeah, and to tell you how much more, so here's the problem. To tell you how much more money that would generate, I would actually have to go out and measure every commercial property. And if we enact a fee like that, that's what we are going to have to do anyway, right? So I believe the breakdowns were like 4,000 square feet of impervious surface, and then 10,000 square feet of impervious surface, and then, I don't know, 15 or 18,000. Is where they made the difference. And Sam is smiling because he told me this question was going to come up, and he's right.
You could have some houses that have more drainage than you do commercial businesses.
You are not wrong. And Brad, my house is an example, right? I have a boatload of driveway and a fair amount of roof line. I'm telling you, the ordinances I'm seeing are a flat fee for residential, and then they're doing something different for commercial. If we want to, we don't want to make it overcomplicated, but I know what you're getting at.
That's right.
I think maybe you even need to look at how much you're spending, how much do we need annually, and work backwards from that.
So the feeling with staff is that if we present you that, you won't do it because it's going to be more money than you're going to enact in year one. Think of this as a new revenue stream. We're going to have to start somewhere. We need to start collecting some money, and then over time, we can ramp it up. I don't think we want to start with a $10 a month fee or a $20 a month fee.
No, I agree, but if we know that $2 is going to cover our maintenance cost, then I think we can go from there and just know that anything above that is going to help cover additional expense.
It'd be nice to start building a fund.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not hearing no, so we'll come back at a later date with some ordinance options. Fair enough?
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, rut. Touched on that a little bit already. A lot of the same in rut. Rut is another, it's kind of like the general fund. It struggles to get by a little bit. I joked with Ange and Sam that I've been working on rut budgets for 20 years, and I think we've had 18 emergencies in those 20 years, or one-time Band-Aids and fixes, and we just continue to get by. This year is no different. We're moving some money around here and there to make it look like something. We cut some costs out of their initial requests. We cut some costs out of it to end the year with a reasonable cash balance. It's really all I have in RUD, unless you have questions.
The Highway 18 overlay, is that this coming summer?
Yes, yep. So that's an overlay, that's sidewalk improvements, and then that's several intersection improvements that the city is participating in. That bid's actually, that already did bid. Our estimated cost is right around $220,000. They're allowing us to make 3 payments of a little over $70,000. So in the urban renewal budget, there's a $72,000 payment contemplated for this fiscal year. And you'll see one more for next year and one more for the year after. We could pay them all at once, but if the DOT wants us to give us interest-free money, we figured why not. Anything else for Rut? Wastewater. The wastewater operations really isn't going to change much. The two things I want to talk about in wastewater, I guess number one, we're proposing a 4% increase to rates. That follows the rate study that we completed a few years ago. That rate study contemplates our rate structure out to 27, 28. So far, our cash balances are tracking very close to the rate study, so we feel like it's working and we're doing what we want to do there. The thing that we need to discuss is the North Fifth Lift Station. So it's about a $700,000 improvement that we weren't planning on. It's one that Wastewater Superintendent Dean Paulson and I believe that you should say yes to. But I'll tell you why we're here asking today. So that lift station.
Just trying to picture where this is in my mind.
Yeah, so it's southeast of the water plant, right along the trail.
Okay.
Yep. So that lift station was inundated by floodwaters with our June flooding. That lift station services 40% of our community. So when that lift station, our total service area, for sewer service area, is a little over 2,900 acres. That, about 700 acres of that service area ultimately ends up flowing through that lift station. So when that lift station got taken out by floodwaters this summer, 40% of our sewer flow, or 40% of our acreage, didn't have a place to be pumped. And it was like that for, well, a couple of days before we got it back actually online. So we were just, obviously we had pumps out doing what we can, but it was a bad situation. Water has never been that high before. Dean and I's thoughts are, it made it once, we have to assume it'll make it again. And that's why we're proposing the improvement. So what the improvement would be is you can't actually move the lift station pumps and the structures, because by design lift stations need to be in the lowest area, because then it gravity feeds to them, then you take the sewage and you pump it up to a point where you can either pump it all the way to the plant, which is what this one does, or you pump it up to another high point where it can gravity feed again. So the actual structures and pumps need to stay down in the bottom. But what did we lose during that flooding? We lost the control structures, the backup generation, the transfer switches. All of that was under about 4 feet of water. So we own some property up the hill to the west, so we would take all those structures, build new ones, replace the controls that we replaced as part of the disaster. We set them up in a way that we could take them out and move them up the hill, so we didn't have to buy twice, at least for the most part. We would recommend, if we do this, that we buy a new backup generator, though. The backup generator that's on site there is an oldest model we have, and it was also underwater. We did get it running and operating again, but it's not one we have tons of confidence in. So anyways, I have applied through FEMA for mitigation funds for that. I don't have an answer yet on, number one, if we're going to get mitigation dollars, and number two, exactly what those mitigation dollars might be. My initial meetings with them, they said, well, you might get the amount of the damage you had to that piece of property. Well, that's only about $80,000, $70,000 or $80,000. I made an argument, not an argument, we had a discussion, and I made the case that since that lift station services 40% of our community, maybe we should get 40% of the damage that was done to our community. They didn't laugh me out of the room. I told them I didn't know what those dollars were, right, because that was all private applications, not applications that the city of Sheldon did. It's that individual property owners did. They did say that they would run that up the flagpole and ask the questions. So I guess at this time we're telling you we have a $700,000-ish improvement that we think you should do. We don't know exactly what it's going to cost us yet. We might get some help with that. We might not. We're just looking for support to move forward with the project. We have enough in wastewater reserves. If you so chose to, I would feel comfortable actually paying cash for the project. And then what we would do in return is there's multiple things in our capital improvement plan that we would slide back a few years to allow the cash to regenerate a little bit. That's a concession on our behalf, but we feel like that it makes sense because there's a greater need here. If you so chose to do a $700,000 or $1 million note, that's something we could discuss at the time. But it's a little hard, simply because that lift station may never flood again. I understand that's a real possibility. It may never happen again. But a hard time knowing that we lost something that services 40% of our community and that it could happen again, and we didn't do anything to make it not happen again. That's why we're asking for the moving. So I'll quit there and ask if you have questions, or find out, I guess, if you support the project.
Is that 700,000 something that the engineers have put together, or is that something you just kind of penciled together in your with staff?
No, Dean and I sat down with an electrical engineer and a civil engineer, and we talked about what we think the project could be, and we had them put a rough budgetary estimate together.
Okay.
So there's an engineer involved, not at a real high level though, Greg. I mean, it's not a great detailed estimate, but
It's not just something you scratched out in the back of a napkin at
no, it's better than that. Okay. Yeah. It's a budgetary estimate, and typically our budgetary estimates are high, but we'll see when we actually get into the project.
Yeah.
I think our citizens would greatly appreciate if we would mitigate this and help eliminate that problem potentially ever happening again.
Well, and I think it's our job to look ahead at
Yep.
what could be, so.
I agree.
Plus, it's operating correctly, but it's not as good a shape as it was before. Would you say that? Something needs to be done.
The only component that I think has lost or been devalued, two components, potentially the buildings, and the other one would be the backup generator. The rest of it was junk. We threw it away and bought all new. The VFDs, the PLCs, the transfer switch, those type things, we had to replace all that.
So Todd, the 40% that you're talking about, is that east, all east?
Mainly, yeah. So it covers a little bit of the north side of town, like it covers North 9th, North 10th, Washington, Rainbow Drive area, and then kind of goes up through the middle school, and then east. Yes.
So any more development that would happen in the future, do we need to incorporate that kind of vision into this project as well?
Yeah, so we already did a couple of years ago, Tom. We already did an east side sanitary sewer assessment. And with that assessment, I added in 8 different potential development areas that felt like could happen, and started putting some assumed flows with those development areas, whether they were going to be commercial, industrial, or residential. Now, granted, there's a lot of guesswork that went into that. Anyways, with that, if we do some development, we would do some pump upsizing at that time, but I don't feel like we need to do that as part of this project. You guys decide to buy some more dirt someday, develop some more dirt out there, yes, then we need to look at upsizing pumps, and there's some actual pipeline that would need to be upsized, and there's actually some recommended pipeline that would need to be paralleled.
So all the pumps are all above ground?
No, the pumps are submersible, but they're on rails, can be pulled from above ground.
Okay.
The other thing we would do with this project is we would, even though the pumps need to stay there, we would look to put more curbing on top, and then assuming the DNR would let us fill in, and I don't know if they'll do that if it's in the flood zone or not, but we would want to curb and fill in to reduce the odds of the stormwater actually just running into those underground structures.
Okay.
Yep. But we are, to your point, we are trying to think ahead of, will it support future improvements and future upgrades that are needed if we purchase more ground east?
I mean, we do that with all the other, structures as you guys replace them. You're looking at that all the time. So I assume so, but
Yep.
Thought it'd be worth.
Yeah, there's, that study contemplates, between $2 and $3 million worth of sewer work, sanitary sewer work needed, depending upon what you buy and how you develop
And
it.
that's both residential and commercial development? That your
Correct.
study was?
Correct. Anything else for wastewater? You'll see the project again. We won't bring it back to you until we have a better idea with mitigation funds and whatnot. If there's not the money in the budget, I don't know that it makes sense to put it in the budget. I guess we can talk that through, or whether it's we amend for it later. Make sense?
You're talking the 700,000?
Yeah.
But you said you had that money in reserve now?
No, I'm saying there's enough. If the project ends up to be 700,000 or less, I personally am comfortable with using cash reserves to pay cash for it and move back in the CIP. Sam has made an argument, and it's a good one, of, well, should we spend down our cash like that, or should we take a short revenue-based note? But we as staff can work that through when we know more about the project and bring a recommendation back to you at a later date. I'm just telling you for now, we'll probably leave it out of the budget and then amend for whatever we decide to do at a later date. Because there would be, I mean, we'd be shooting spit wads right now to really know what we're actually going to do. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay, last one. Well, not last, second to last one. Water. We are looking at a 6.5% increase in rates. That follows the same rate study that I discussed before. We've got multiple projects and some equipment the guys are wanting to get. The one that I'm actually excited about is the valve exercising trailer. That's something that has been in their back, or they've been bugging me about for a number of years, and I kept saying no, 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 and then I finally went to a demo to one, and I should have said yes 5 years ago. But anyways, it's going to be a nice piece of equipment that is going to allow us to maintain our valves a lot better, a lot safer, and hopefully slow down on the need for valve replacements. So it's really all I have. Our water contracts, our water sales contracts with Sioux Center and Clay River Water in South Dakota are still humming along nicely. In January of 2026, the contract between us and Sioux Center goes up from 200,000 a day to 500,000 a day. So we'll start selling Sioux Center substantially more water as of January 1 of 2026.
How long do those contracts last?
I think they both expire. I think one of them expires maybe in 2032 and the other one expires in maybe in 2033. When it gets out, Pete, to say before 2030, we'll be looking to maybe renew them. Don't forget, in 2031, it's estimated that we are going to have another 756,000 gallons a day of Lewis and Clark water coming to us. So that's a great thing, other than if we don't have a home for it, we've got to pay for it. So what are we doing there? I'm already talking to others, right? There's water needs in Northwest Iowa, so I'm already having conversations with others. We intend on, right now, we're running a 70-30 blend. In 2031, when we get that extra water, we're actually planning to change our blend ratio to 80-20. Give our customers a little better quality water, still keep our wells going. It's still financially, it looks like that will make the most sense. But we'll be looking to up and maybe even enter into contracts with some other people if we can get some signed. There's some needs out there.
When I tell people about what you're doing with the water, I refer to you as our water czar.
Oh, yeah.
You wear that title well.
I think you're giving me too much credit, Greg. But it's a good problem to have. We're sitting in a good position. The mayors and councils of the past, when decided to retain the amount of water that they did for Sheldon and or Northwest Iowa, was a very smart decision.
Precious commodity.
Yep, I'd rather be in the market of having than needing.
Yep.
Okay, anything else for water?
Nope.
Code enforcement, as you can see attached, is Steve's memo and what he is asking for in the next 2 fiscal years. I guess all I'll say is he's a great resource. I think Sam agrees with that. I don't know what we do without him. I think his ask is very reasonable for the work we are getting out of him.
He sent me an annual report yesterday or the day before, and I thought I had linked it, but I guess I didn't.
Yeah. Well, that can get sent out afterwards. I skim read it, but yeah, there's a fair amount of good information in there. Yeah. We would both recommend that you renew his contract. Matter of fact, it's already inserted into the budget. We're assuming you're going to say yes.
With the 7% increase.
The only question I had about it was, initially I would expect him to be having to spend more hours and less as time goes on. I realize nuisance enforcement is a ongoing thing, but as he's established, shouldn't it be going the other way rather than up?
I would tell you that when he signed and offered us that first contract, he grossly underestimated the amount of work that we were going to give him.
Okay.
So you agree, Sam? Yeah. I'm shocked the price hasn't went up more than it has. I think he's being more than fair with us because he spends a lot of hours, takes care of a lot of things.
Satisfied.
Yep.
It's just a question that ran through my head.
No, it's a fair question. Yeah, it's definitely a fair question, but I think he underestimated the amount of work Sheldon would have.
All right. Okay.
I have a question on recap.
Okay. Yep.
Todd, I don't want to forget this, and I don't want to surprise the council with this issue, but as we were talking here, I realized I think I may have made an error in the TIF budget, and here's what it would be, is in your memo on cemetery, you have 75,000. And in the, under the cemetery item, which is, item 8, number 10.
Page 119 in your binder.
But then when you look at the TIF budget, which is under item 14B, I've got $60,000.
Oh, the 15
Did we talk about that?
The 15 for tree removals, are they someplace else, or are we just taking them out of general?
You're okay with taking the 15 for tree removal out of the 75?
No, I'm saying we must not have included it.
Okay.
I'll say this, though. It's probably okay, because in the tree removal tip asking, this past, or the current fiscal year we're in, we asked you guys for $150,000 out of urban renewal for tree removals. We've only spent about $75,000 of that to date, and we're not asking for more urban renewal tree removal funds next year, because we've hit the urban renewal area significantly hard, so we're asking to carry over the current funds. I can fit it within that yet, Sam, if we need to. That's doable.
Okay.
Yeah. We do, I guess, yeah, trees, we do plan to continue to remove some more trees. There's 100,000 in lost, and then a carryover balance of 75,000 in urban renewal or in TIF funds that's request for the next fiscal year. So there is about 100 ash trees yet that are on our list of good ash. We don't think they're going to look good in the spring, but time will tell. We left them because they looked better than the others. And then somebody's crying behind me. And then the other is we've been taking down a fair amount of trees that we feel are hazards. Few things I've noticed since we started taking down trees. The harder we look, the more we see, and sometimes I wish my eyes were closed. We're just, you see more hazards, and you see the hazards, and once you see them, you can't unsee them, and now you have a duty, right? You have a duty to get rid of that hazard, whether it be by trimming and or removal, and there's a lot of it out there.
We got lucky.
You're not wrong, Brad. Yep.
The picture on the website, or the picture that I've sent out with the link on the tree planting moratorium, that hollow tree there, I think that picture is from Hills Park.
It's a cottonwood
And
from
that
Hills,
was a
yeah.
cottonwood that was near a campsite, and you could crawl through it.
But the other thing, there's, I'll give you an example. Something that I never had really thought about before, but there's a healthy tree in our right-of-way tree removal list. And it is, you know why? It's right next to a crosswalk. And I hadn't really ever thought of that before until we removed the 2 trees by the crosswalk near the school on Washington and 6th Street. And all of a sudden, you can see the kids standing there. They're not standing in between 2 trees anymore. So what did that do? That made us start looking at our other pedestrian crosswalks, and we're like, well, yeah, somebody could be hiding right behind there, and an oncoming driver would not see them. It's a safety issue. I mean, if drivers can't see the people, it's a safety issue. So those are not on the urgent list, but those are trees that are starting to make the backside of our list now, and it's because of public safety.
Some cities have ordinances and where you can plant and where you can't plant on intersections.
We do too, or we did before the moratorium, but I don't know that it was ever enforced or it wasn't in place when a lot of these trees went in the ground.
Right.
Yeah. Intersections, there's so many trees that are way too close to intersections.
Right. And bushes.
And bushes,
all
and
the
yep,
same, yeah.
yep, absolutely, Tom. So, it's not always fun, but when you really look at it, there is some benefit to it, and there is some definite safety issues out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you say 30 minutes or 3 minutes?
I got 39 minutes and 45 seconds.
All right, we are at a crossroads here. We can go into 10, but it is close to 6:30, which was our target for tonight. My question is, do you want to go through the items 10? How long do you think it'll take to go through that area?
Depends on your question.
But give us an estimate.
10 minutes.
Okay?
20.
So it's 20 minutes at worst. You want to do that tonight, or you want to come back at it tomorrow night and cut it off here for now?
Guys are done, we're here.
I think anything we do tonight is less time on the clock tomorrow night. So unless somebody has strong feelings, I would say let's finish up 10 and then call it a night.
I would prefer it. I have another meeting tomorrow night afterwards.
Okay?
Okay. 10A is, may I?
Yes, sir.
10A is capital projects and land. Okay, so Todd asked me this morning, Sam, why did you put together this agenda item? It seems like you created busy work for yourself, and I really didn't. You admit saying that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, but I really didn't. I didn't do it as, I also did it for me because I had this information scattered all over, and it's really nice to have this where I can I know where it is and I can access it easily. So capital projects, that's a carryover from the airport commission meeting and from city council meeting in December. So that's just there for easy reference, having the CIP, okay? If there's no questions, I'll move on to 10B. 10B is...
Go, give him a minute. Any questions?
Sorry.
I'm still trying to play catch up. Ken, I see you looking. Do you have questions? No.
Not yet.
Okay.
Go on.
And 10B is a land update. It's not 100%. It doesn't include all the rights of way, obviously, that we own, but it gives you a high level of the property that either SCDC owns or could own, or that the city owns, okay? So I'll just very briefly hit it, looking at the attachments. So in order to see the attachments, you'd have to be on the online version of the agenda because most of these are not in your binder. Some of them are. You got Trilogy Land, which is over by Fieldcrest. You have the Granstra options near Co-op. You have some of the Granstra options, particularly north of Co-op, could be potentially used for LMI, low and moderate income housing. The LMI threshold that is linked under this agenda item. We can talk more about that later. You have the SCDC option on the Rise Fest ground. That's only if it's only under certain circumstances where there would be a buyback. There's the capital land sales investment fund balance, which you'll be pleased to note is building with interest, and that's currently almost $690,000. That would be available. Those are Rise Fest. One of the two Rise Fest sales is in that account. Is that correct, Angie?
I believe
The
both
cat.
of them are.
No, because one was 607 and one was more, but I think there was 2 rounds of sales, but I think it's Rise Fest sales that's in there. We can clarify that later. Got the land leases that we have in there. And I'll stand for questions.
Are you going somewhere with this in terms of presenting the information, or it's just a FYI?
Well, I mean, if you decide that you want to exercise, for example, land options at any point prior to 2028 when they go up, or 2033 when the Granstra options completely expire, then the planning starts now. You don't have to exercise now, but if you look at the way Kurt had handled past land option exercises, there's a lot more courtesy that he was providing than what's required in the option. My recommendation would be to follow his practice of providing the courtesy, and that means not waiting until the very end to exercise and then surprising the landowners, right? So just read through those options. They're fairly self-explanatory. Todd's doing some research on LMI, on what you could potentially else use. Probably wouldn't want to put housing east of Co-op, north of Highway 18, but you theoretically could have some LMI ground north of Co-op. You'd also have some fairly extensive sewer work that would have to be done in a lift station, correct? But we're at the beginning. We're just looking at those options so we can present that to you.
Well, like you said, you got it all in one place, so I think we need to know a little bit more where we're going.
All right, and then I've got the maps. So this is nice to have. So we've got them all in one place again.
Appreciate that.
The south end of the Floyd, I understand, is being taken, or is not being sold or offered for sale at this time, I think, because of the 11 acres that was purchased at the south end of the Floyd that goes out to the blacktop. That big parcel on the south end of the Floyd is not being offered for sale, but anyway, that plat is nice to have because it gives you an idea of what
That map
what's
is not
on.
in here, that latest round, is it? 11 acres?
No.
what reason? Why isn't it included?
That's why I mentioned it.
Okay.
We just bought it.
Okay.
So,
What's-
yeah.
What was the question about in the 11 acres?
Well, the south end of the Floyd
Yeah.
wouldn't be sold right now while it's determined what to do with the 11 acres.
Okay, I didn't hear that
Yep.
part of it.
Yep.
And that, the south end of Floyd did not have infrastructure to it.
No.
And there was a decision. Not that you couldn't put road and water and sewer in there, you can only go so far with the sewer, I'd need to look at that again, but there was a decision made a lot of years ago to not continue the road at a level high enough to get culverts under the road where that draw was, because the road was going to be, I don't remember, 9-10 feet higher than the ground. So the theory at that time was, and not that this can't change, but the theory at that time was, is well, you could potentially sell it to somebody that needs a large display area. They put their buildings on one end, send it to the other. So if we end up deciding to run a road through there and turn and go back through that 11 acres, we'll need to figure out what we're going to do with some drainage. That'll take some creative thinking, I'll just say that, but not impossible. They didn't think it was going to be marketable. I don't know. Brad, you were around then.
Yeah,
It was
I
a
remember-
long, it was
I
a
remember
long time
talking
ago.
about it.
Yeah.
And I think the land was purchased, those 11 acres, potentially to give another exit to the
south.
to the east,
Oh, east, yeah.
to the blacktop
And it gives you rail access,
rail access.
which you didn't have before.
No.
Right.
Any further comments? Nope. Any questions? All right. I think we're at a point where we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Ken,
Aye.
Snyder,
Aye.
Hamel,
Aye.